Imagine, just for a second, that there's this fly buzzing around your living room.
Okay.
It's super annoying, it's destructive, and you absolutely need it gone, right?
Right.
Now imagine that to get rid of that fly, you decide to reach into a safe, pull out a solid gold bar, and just hurl it across the room to swat the fly.
I mean, you'd probably hit the fly eventually, but you're going to destroy your walls, smash your television, and, completely bankrupt yourself in the process.
Exactly. It's an absurd strategy. It sounds like a cartoon sketch.
Yeah, it does.
But that is essentially the reality of modern aerial warfare right now.
Welcome to today's Deep Dives, by the way. Our mission today is to unpack this exact problem, because massive, technologically sophisticated militaries are currently out there shooting down $35,000 Russian Shahed drones using $4 million Patriot missiles.
Oh, or, in some cases, those $6 million SM-6 missiles. It really is the gold bar swatting the fly. It's insane, and we're going to explore this trending, genuinely game-changing piece of tech, this $2,000 autonomous interceptor drone called the Terra A1 that's actively fixing this. And what's wild is it wasn't made by the Pentagon. It's this crazy alliance between Japan and Ukraine.
Yeah, and that partnership, it's the key to this whole paradigm shift for anyone paying attention to global security.
Yeah.
We're not just looking at a cool new gadget here. We are looking at how, rapid, almost desperate innovation is actively dismantling the old doctrines of global defense.
Right.
It's changing who holds geopolitical power and why having the biggest defense budget might actually be a liability moving forward.
So let's get into the sheer scale of this problem first, because to understand why the Terra A1 was created, you have to understand the volume of the threat. I don't think people realize just how saturated the skies are.
They really don't.
The numbers from March of 2026 are just staggering. In that single month, Russia fired 6,462 drones.
Which is just, picture that continuous flow. That's over 200 drones a day.
Every single day.
Right, relentless. It's not a targeted strike anymore, It's like a permanent weather condition of aerial threats.
And it goes both ways now, right? Because in that same month, Ukraine actually exceeded that number for the first time. They launched 7,347 long-range drones of their own.
The airspace is completely clogged.
Yeah. But going back to that gold bar analogy, if you try to defend against a swarm like that using traditional methods, the financial drain is just unfathomable.
Because traditional doctrine says you use a modern air defense system to protect your assets. Think of a Patriot battery.
Right.
A Patriot interceptor is this multi-million-dollar marvel of engineering.
Yeah.
It's designed to knock supersonic ballistic missiles out of the stratosphere. It has complex radar arrays, incredibly expensive solid rocket propellants.
Yeah, intricate guidance systems.
Exactly. So using that against a noisy, slow-moving drone that essentially amounts to a flying moped engine strapped to explosives is a massive misallocation of resources.
I actually crunched the math on this to see just how bad it is.
Oh, wait on me.
If Ukraine tried to use a Patriot missile to intercept every single one of those 6,462 drones Russia launched in March, it would have cost $25.8 billion.
Wow.
And that's not a yearly budget. That's $25.8 billion in 31 days.
Which is literally the GDP of a small nation just burned up in a month.
Yeah.
No economy on the planet can sustain that burn rate.
No way.
And look, the attackers know this. This is what military economists call the economics of exhaustion. The goal of throwing thousands of cheap drones at a city isn't necessarily to blow up a specific building.
It's just to drain the bank account.
Exactly. The primary strategy is to force the defender to empty their silos. You exhaust their supply of expensive interceptors so that when you finally launch the really dangerous, high-value ballistic missile,
The defender has nothing left to shoot them down with.
bingo.
I mean, I know there are alternative systems out there like the Coyote Interceptor, but even that runs about $125,000 per shot.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with 6,000 targets, $125,000 a pop still puts you in the poorhouse.
It does. It just, slows down the bankruptcy.
Right, but this is where the Terra A1 comes in and completely shatters the equation. Because this new interceptor drone costs just $2,000 to manufacture.
That price point is everything.
So let's rerun that March scenario, right? If you take those 6,000-ish incoming drones and intercept them all with $2,000 Terra A1s, the defense cost plummets from $25.8 billion down to 12.9 million.
And that is the exact moment the economic advantage reverses.
How so?
Because building and launching those 6,000 Shaheds cost the attacker roughly $226 million.
Oh, wow.
Right. So with the Terra A1, it suddenly cost the attacker nearly 20 times more to launch the strike than it cost the defender to neutralize it.
That's incredible.
The whole economics of exhaustion strategy just collapses.
So, hearing all this, a massive question immediately jumps to mind for me and probably for you listening right now. If the math is so obvious and, $2,000 interceptors solve a multi-billion-dollar problem, why hasn't anyone done this until now?
It's a fair question.
Like, why wasn't a major defense contractor building these 5 years ago?
Well, because massive defense contractors aren't built for a $2,000 price point.
Right.
They're built for decade-long development cycles and massive government contracts. To build something this cheap, this fast, you need a very specific collision of environments.
What kind of collision?
You need the desperate, raw, rapid prototyping that only happens in an active war zone, combined with the incredibly patient, deep manufacturing capital of a stable, high-tech economy.
And that collision is exactly what happened at a defense exhibition in 2025. This is where the human element of the story comes in. You have these two founders who represent entirely different universes.
Complete opposites.
Yeah. On one side, you have Toru Tokushika. He's the founder of Terra Drone Corporation, which is this Japanese tech powerhouse with 650 employees.
Listed right on the Tokyo Stock Exchange.
Exactly. They are a classic, high-efficiency corporate machine driven by international expansion.
A company that understands global supply chains, mass production, and corporate finance at the very highest level.
Right. And then sitting across the table from him is Maxim Klemenko. He's the founder of Amazing Drones, and Amazing Drones didn't even exist 3 years ago.
Right, it's totally brand new.
It literally formed out of a volunteer initiative in the frontline city of Kharkiv. It was just a group of people scrambling to defend their city, testing ideas under fire, and they eventually became the star player in Ukraine's Brave One Defense Innovation Cluster.
So you essentially have Tokyo boardrooms meeting Kharkiv's basements.
Such a wild image.
It is. Amazing Drones had the blood-bought battlefield experience. They knew the exact flight profile of a Shahed drone, they knew its blind spots, and, they knew exactly how to kill you.
But they couldn't scale.
Exactly. What they didn't have was a way to build thousands of them. Terra Drone had the business architecture and the capital to make that happen.
And that capital infusion came in the form of a $10 million investment from Terra Drone to fund the Terra A1. Now, at first glance, $10 million in the defense world sounds like pocket change.
Oh, it's a rounding error for the Pentagon.
Right. But there is a massive underlying financial mechanic here that makes this work, and it comes down to the cost of borrowing that money.
Yes. This is a phenomenal point that usually gets completely ignored when we talk about military hardware.
Break it down for us.
Well, if you are a startup operating inside a war-torn country, your domestic economy is under severe stress. If you go to a local bank for a loan to build a factory, the interest rates are going to hover around 20%.
Wait, 20%? A 20% interest rate on a manufacturing loan is basically a death sentence for a business trying to scale quickly.
It absolutely is. I mean, if you're buying carbon fiber, leasing equipment, and paying engineers, a 20% burn rate on your debt means you will run out of cash before you even hit full production.
Yeah, the math doesn't work.
But Japanese capital operates in a completely different reality. The interest rates attached to that Japanese funding are around 2%.
Wow, 2%. That is virtually free money.
Exactly. It's the oxygen that allows a scrappy, brilliant prototype to actually transition into mass production. Japan's 2% money is the secret weapon here.
But even with cheap money, scaling up physical manufacturing in a city under constant bombardment seems impossible. Like, you can't just throw up a giant gigafactory in Kharkiv.
No, absolutely not.
A satellite would spot it on day one, and it would be a smoking crater by day two.
Which forces another layer of innovation, right? Decentralized manufacturing. You have to break the assembly line into tiny pieces and scatter it.
Right. Tokushige actually pointed this out. The Ukrainian engineers figured out how to distribute production across multiple hidden rotating locations.
That's brilliant.
So maybe the chassis is 3D printed in an underground garage somewhere, and the circuit boards are soldered in an old warehouse across town, and final assembly happens somewhere else entirely.
Incredibly complex logistics.
Yeah, and right now, a single worker can output 2 Terra A1s per day using this method.
And while they are scaling that distributed model, Terra Drone is aggressively looking at a massive alternative, lifting the manufacturing process entirely and bringing it directly to Japanese soil.
Wow.
Yeah, they are talking about a direct technology transfer from the trenches of Eastern Europe to the automated factory floors of a G7 nation.
And that kind of technology transfer raises a huge question about what is actually under the hood of this thing. We need to look at the mechanics of the drone itself. Like, what does $2,000 actually buy you in the sky?
Some pretty impressive specs, honestly.
The numbers on the Terra A1 are wild. It tops out at 300 kilometers per hour, which is roughly 186 miles per hour. Very fast. It has a range of about 35 kilometers, or just over 20 miles, and its battery gives it a 15-minute mission cycle to conduct surveillance, lock onto a target, and intercept.
And that speed, the 300 kilometers per hour, that is the deciding factor. Because unlike a massive anti-aircraft missile, the Terra A1 doesn't rely on a giant, heavy explosive warhead to take out its target.
Oh, really?
No, it relies almost entirely on kinetic energy.
Meaning it just rams into it.
In essence, yes, it basically turns itself into a high-speed projectile. The typical Russian Shahed drone cruises at around 200 kilometers per hour.
Okay, so it's 100 kilometers per hour slower.
Right, because the Terra A1 is moving that much faster, it has complete tactical superiority.
Yeah.
Shahed can't outrun it, and it can't outmaneuver it.
The phrase the source used to describe this pursuit is incredible. It called it an inescapable drone death dance.
A very poetic way to put it.
It is. The Terra A1 actively hunts the target down. But I have to push back on a specific claim made about this drone. The documentation calls the Terra A1 stealthy.
Right.
When I hear stealth, my brain immediately goes to, billion-dollar B-2 bombers with crazy geometric angles and radar-absorbent paint.
Sure, the traditional definition.
Yeah, we are talking about a $2,000 plastic and carbon fiber drone. How on earth is that stealthy?
That's a really great distinction to make. Because we aren't talking about evading massive phased array radar systems here. We are talking about evading the specific sensors that the enemy drone operators rely on.
Oh, okay.
The Terra A1 uses a highly efficient electric propulsion system. A Shahed drone uses an internal combustion engine. It literally sounds like a loud buzzing moped, and it pumps out a mass amount of heat from its exhaust.
So a Shahed lights up like a Christmas tree on a thermal camera.
Exactly, but an electric motor. It emits practically zero noise and almost no heat signature.
Oh, I see. So to the thermal sensors looking for targets in the dark, the Terra A1 is effectively invisible.
Completely cold and completely silent. Think about the operator sitting hundreds of miles away in Russia. They are staring at acoustic monitors and thermal imaging screens. Right. Because the Terra A1 gives off neither of those things, the Russian operator has absolutely no idea they are being hunted.
That's terrifying.
The only chance they have to spot it is if the Terra A1 happens to fly directly across the tiny, narrow field of view of the Shahed's optical camera, a split second before impact.
It's just a shadow in the sky until the screen goes to static.
Yeah. And the final, perhaps most crucial feature is the autonomy. The Terra A1 does not require an operator sitting in a bunker with a joystick trying to execute a high-speed mid-air collision.
Which is good, because that would require hundreds of hours of simulator training. You'd need an entire academy of specialized pilots just to fly the interceptor.
Exactly. And you don't have the time or the resources for that in a war of attrition.
So how does it steer?
The software on the Terra A1 handles the terminal phase of the interception autonomously. It uses machine vision to identify the target, calculates the intercept trajectory, and executes the strike itself.
So you just launch it into the general area of the threat, and the software takes over.
Pretty much, yeah.
That is wild. And we aren't just speculating that this might work in theory either. This strategy is already tearing up the playbook.
Oh, it's heavily proven.
If we look at the data from February 2026, before the Terra A1 was even fully scaled up, older models of interceptor drones were already taking control of the airspace.
Yeah, the numbers there are amazing.
Interceptors took down 70% of the Shaheds targeting Kyiv and accounted for about 30% of all intercepts across the entire country.
Ukraine's commander-in-chief actually released the overarching numbers for that month. Interceptor drones carried out 6,300 sorties and successfully destroyed over 1,500 Russian UAVs.
Wow.
That is an astonishing success rate for a technology that was, essentially duct taped together a year prior.
So the Terra A1 is taking a strategy that is already succeeding and optimizing it with Japanese precision and cheap capital, which opens up the final and really the most massive piece of this whole puzzle, the global ripple effect. A technology this cheap and this effective doesn't just stay isolated to one conflict, it completely rewrites geopolitical power dynamics.
It really does. Let's start with Japan's motivations, actually, because they aren't injecting capital and resources simply out of goodwill.
Right.
Japan is looking very closely at its own neighborhood. They're surrounded by heavily armed neighbors like North Korea and China, who are investing massively in drone swarms.
That's a tough spot.
It is. And Japan's traditional defense posture has relied on exactly those multi-million-dollar legacy systems we discussed earlier.
So they realize they're vulnerable to the exact same economics of exhaustion.
Exactly. By partnering with amazing drones, Japan is effectively leapfrogging a decade of expensive research and development. They are acquiring hard, combat-tested data and proven tactics.
And it goes way beyond a single drone factory, too.
Just wild. It's deep.
Japan recently pledged $1.3 billion under their Peace in Ukraine project. They threw in another $3.8 million just for cultural repair.
Yeah.
But the detail that really highlights the scale of this comes from the UN Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO. They recently finalized agreements with 47 different Japanese companies to begin testing their business models and technologies directly inside Ukraine.
Think about that. It is a massive testing ground. Japan is laying down the infrastructure for deep, long-term technological integration.
47 companies.
Yeah, and there are even serious discussions about Japan purchasing Ukrainian attack drones to modernize its own defense forces. Think about that. A G7 nation is buying weapons from a wartime startup economy.
It's unheard of. And Japan is just the tip of the iceberg here. What we are seeing is Ukraine rapidly morphing into a global defense hub. They're taking this $2,000 technological mastery and exporting it globally.
The Middle East is the prime example of this shift right now.
Yes. Ukraine is currently signing decade-long defense agreements with major Gulf nations, specifically Saudi Arabia and Qatar.
Which is huge.
I found this part fascinating because at first, Saudi Arabia and Ukraine don't seem like an obvious defense pairing. But when you look at the mechanics of it, it makes perfect sense.
Oh, totally. Because those Gulf states are terrified of the exact same drones. The Shahed technology that Russia is using to bombard power grids in Eastern Europe is the exact same Iranian-designed technology that threatens oil refineries in the Middle East.
It is the exact same threat profile.
Yes. And historically, a country like Saudi Arabia would turn to the United States for air defense. But the Gulf states watched the U.S. military use up to 8 Patriot missiles to shoot down a single target in the Red Sea. 8. They watched the deployment of $6 million SM-6 missiles to destroy $70,000 drones. They did the math and they realized it is a dead end.
So instead of calling Washington for more million-dollar missiles, they call Kyiv. Ukraine actually has drone specialists deployed in the Middle East right now, teaching these Gulf nations how to intercept these specific threats for $2,000 a pop.
It creates an incredibly strong web of alliances based on practical, immediate technological needs, rather than, old historical treaties.
Right.
Throw in the fact that Ukraine's accession to the European Union is being heavily touted for 2027, and you have a nation that is rapidly cementing itself into the core of global security.
Meanwhile, the country that started all of this is moving in the exact opposite direction. The contrast is unbelievable. The data points to a total collapse of Russia's geopolitical leverage.
That's bad.
According to reporting from the Moscow Times in March 2026, Russia's global arms exports have plummeted by a staggering 64% over the last 5 years.
A 64% collapse is catastrophic. The arms trade wasn't just a revenue stream for Russia, it was a primary tool of foreign policy.
How so?
Well, if you rely on Russian maintenance, Russian parts, and Russian training, you are tied to their geopolitical orbit.
Ah, right. So why the massive drop? Is it just because they are hoarding everything for the front lines?
That is part of it, definitely. But the more damaging reason is that the world is watching these legacy systems fail in real time.
Oh, wow.
If you are a military buyer in India or China, and you see that a supposedly impenetrable Russian S-400 air defense system can be bypassed or exhausted by a swarm of cheap plastic drones, You cancel your order.
You start looking for alternative suppliers.
Exactly. This is why EU countries are now selling 4 times as many weapons as Russia globally.
The economic hit is pairing with severe diplomatic isolation, too. 2026 has been brutal for their alliances. In South America, Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro was taken out of the picture, entirely removing a critical strategic partner.
And their anchor in the Middle East is facing intense volatility right now. Iran is dealing with internal chaos, with Ali Khamenei's authority being actively threatened by an uprising referred to as Operation Epic Fury.
Right.
So right as Ukraine is securing decade-long defense pacts in the Gulf, Russia's primary ally in the region is fundamentally destabilized.
It is an incredible irony. I mean, the entire objective of the 2022 invasion was to dismantle Ukraine and assert conventional superpower dominance.
Yeah.
But applying that kind of extreme pressure to a technologically adaptable society acted like a pressure cooker. It forced Ukraine to innovate out of sheer survival.
Absolutely.
And by doing so, they created a cheap, scalable technology that is rendering the invaders' conventional military obsolete, isolating them globally, and completely crashing their export economy.
That is the danger of fighting a modern war with outdated economic assumptions. You think you are fighting a smaller military, but you are actually fighting a decentralized network of rapid innovation.
So bringing all of this together for you listening.
Yeah.
We started by talking about the absurdity of throwing a solid gold bar at a housefly, the $4 million missile trying to catch the $35,000 drone.
Right.
What we've unpacked today is how the Terra A1, an autonomous piece of technology that costs the same as a mid-range laptop, is completely dismantling the multi-billion-dollar air defense strategies of the last 50 years.
It proves that the future of defense doesn't belong to the nation with the biggest, heaviest, most explosive weapons.
Not anymore.
No, it belongs to whoever can iterate, adapt, and scale the smartest, cheapest tech the fastest.
Which leaves us with a truly massive downstream effect to think about. If this is the new reality, if anyone can print a highly effective $2,000 smart drone, what happens to the domestic economies of traditional superpowers?
That's the billion-dollar question.
We're talking about the massive aerospace manufacturing towns in the US, the giant defense contractors, the lobbyists whose entire existence relies on selling $4 million missiles to the government. If wars are now won by cheap disposable tech from decentralized garages, what happens when those trillion-dollar defense contracts just disappear?
That is a financial earthquake waiting to happen. The entire military-industrial complex is going to have to reinvent itself or literally face extinction.
It's a completely different world. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the rapid shifts in the systems around you, because the future isn't just arriving faster than we thought, it's arriving a whole lot cheaper. Catch you next time.